Internet, YouTube, hello. This is a bit of a housekeeping video, I think. It's a kind of wrapping up some ideas and thoughts into what I think is a solution, And I'm making this video. I'm commenting. I listen to like I often comment on different YouTubers, and one of the things that I find lacking in this on this platform is a reflection of personal choice. I'm going to go into this a little bit because I've been thinking about it, and the origin of this may be a little bit too epic because I'm working on a painting, and I'm thinking about stuff and how things fit together, how things work. Um, Coming to this understanding, once we have a sense of the misdeeds, and I say this with an inflection on what it is that we experience for the most part in a large context and in the microcosm of our own lives, quite often is very dysfunctional. So to step away and say, well, I can't do anything about it, or no, everything is sort of okay anyway, I'll live with it, is not a rational. I use rational in the truest sense of the word, like a sense of self being balanced, like a feeling of balance in my life is connected to this sense of a rational. And I don't want to use rational because it's so abused again. It's like consciousness. These words are so abused and misinterpreted. It's something that is proliferates. It's people put things out, and it's just basically propaganda to make us think in a certain way, not for ourselves, but just think in a certain way. And it may not even be, it may be well-meaning, but as long as we don't verify something within ourselves, and this is what I'm going to get to, the idea of a solution within, and I'm basically talking to people that have listened to me and have understood the epic dysfunction called Fukushima. I come back to this. This is a reality that is unfolding without uh, the human conscience having having been put to sleep over millennia of the anomalies that have been incorporated into our lives, like the idea that culture actually has some value for us. There may be pockets where I enjoy, I participate, but for the most part, what we consider to be our our environment, our emotional, spiritual, physical environment is just completely dysfunctional when we look at it. So I thought about this in terms of attacking the big picture and my advocacy to expose the horrendous events that have occurred in Japan at a nuclear plant called Fukushima. This is very important. Every day I think about this. Obviously, I'm 10,000 miles away, so it's not a question, nor am I a physicist that can stop the atom from splitting if I knew, and I'm sure there's someone out there that knows. People, I'm convinced this reality, the complexity of this reality is so guided and by intent to be what it is. There's always another version to it. There is a solution to it. There is a solution to Fukushima, but we're being hijacked into a direction that doesn't allow this imagination and this ability, or finding the souls that have this insight to come to the fore. This is part of intent. I believe there is an intent behind the destruction. But I'm finding myself reflecting on what it is that matters to me and what it is that would make a difference in my life, and how my life can actually have some effect, some significant effect on other beings that are sharing this experience, whether it's plant, animal, human, whatever, I feel that there is a connection I have that I want to, in my time here, I want to be able to elaborate on this connection that I feel. And what is the essence and substance of my being in relation to this experience and other people? I suppose I'm more inclined for people because I have no idea what other creatures are feeling or thinking, or the experience of other beings. Although I am respectful and interested in what it is. I have to get this. I continue. Okay, interruption gone. Here's my point. I guess I had a chance to gather myself so I don't go on and on and on. Here's a solution for people like, I'm going to mention a name again, somebody that has a fabulous channel called Quantum of Conscience. I'll mention him again, who analyzes the dysfunction quite well. I find, I believe him to be sincere. There are many people out there that have a dog in the fight that is not based on a sincere or honest intent. Intent is everything for me. To be able to arrive at a notion of a person's integrity through intent is, I've had difficulty judging character quite often, and it's something that consequence of it is I felt betrayed. I have betrayed because my intent was not what I would say pure. It's like there is alternate or what is that, ulterior motives or secondary gains and all that kind of thing. You know, what happens in networking, people that are networkers, it's all about secondary gain. You never trust anyone networking. I find that to be really a nasty concept. It's just business. It's like the mafioso guy killing somebody. So it's just business. Forget about it. You know, forget about it. Yeah, wise guy. So, like I'm not different from anyone else from this sense of what do I do once I reach the quantum of conscience character Matt's insight. See, he for me falls short now because he's continuously hammering at the world out there. Like, he never mentions Fukushima because he thinks he can sort of collect what he says soul tokens and go to the next level of, he likes consciousness, the word consciousness. What the fuck is consciousness? Come on. It's like saying sugar is sweet. You know, what is that feeling? You know, it's like, it's just one of those things that could mean anything. So what do you do with your soul tokens? It's like, yeah, it's a nice little metaphor, I suppose, for our struggle to deal with this existence that we're all participating in this mystery. So once we have established that it's dysfunctional, which is most of the people are not accepting, they feel suffering and they feel desires, something isn't working, you know, I wish there was this way or that way. It's usually connected to selfishness. But if you truly understand, like I think this Matt character does, people I listen to that I enjoy, or even amazing Polly, this lady from Toronto that does her analysis, focusing completely and 100% on the world out there. And this is the kind of level of dealing with the dysfunction to basically expose it. And it has value. I find it valuable because people have imagination behind this, which I really like, because to be able to analyze events and understand that they're actually occurring when they're camouflaged, the system camouflages itself behind it. If you look at sports or if you look at culture and art, it's a big camouflage to something else going on underneath. And the people I just mentioned, they understand this. But here's where it always falls short for me, because once we have arrived at this level of insight about the world out there, the obvious question is, you can scream your head off about the world out there and feel totally frustrated. Usually people that have this integrity and intent, there is a level of frustration. But I also think, here's a nuance. I also think the frustration is also with not looking at our inner world. This is what happens when we feel so overwhelmed by the things that we're surrounded by, and rightfully too. Like I say, this epic event at Fukushima poisoning our planet is so huge in terms of comprehension for me to actually wrap myself around the idea of an entire swath of species on this planet, including us, being so toxified and threatened, all life threatened, is like really a tough thing to, okay? So, but I'm going to put this aside now because I'm going to say what I'm doing or what I feel I'm doing that actually makes a difference, that could actually make a difference in terms of the, I guess, a feeling of transition. And I'm commenting here, not because I've arrived at a state of nirvana and I have transitioned, but I'm involved in this transition for myself. I feel this. And how I feel this is to be able to make personal choices. Elaborate. I'm going to elaborate on this. So here, I understand the dysfunction. I have a pretty good idea. I mean, I don't understand it in a nitty-gritty sense, meaning of the origin of it, whether it's a simulation or whether it's run from a supercomputer or an AI. All these things may very well be possible. But I need to rely fundamentally, whether I'm controlled, whether my mind is controlled by some tentacle out there. It's the Hydra, the cultural Hydra. That's an obvious thing, but I'm even thinking behind that. I have to trust, and this is it. I have to trust someone, or primarily something within myself. It's probably a better idea to trust something within yourself rather than someone because, like I say, I'm a bad judge of character a lot of the time. And how do I overcome, or how do I transition from the world out there to the world within? Because we're taught from early on when we get to be 4, 5, 6, go to school, it's all about the world out there and fitting in some form or other. We fit in, we all fit in, and we end up fitting until the rest of our lives, for the rest of our lives until we die, and we fit into a coffin, and it's made in our shape and we're put under the ground. So I'm saying, let's not fit in anymore. And how do I not fit in? So, you know, the art comes into play. Very important, because when I make my work, I need to make decisions that are verified to something within myself rather than out there. And I think this is very important for people that have an understanding of the complexity within this mystery, but have, well, now what feeling? Like me, I have, well, okay, now I understand what's going on out there. Now what? What do I do with this understanding? And I'm saying, the presenters, and they're not going to do it. I comment on this Matt guy, Quantum of Conscience or Polly. I mean, they have their worldview, and it's like a blinder thing. Once you get so inculcated with this subject, it can totally take you down a path, and you're just contributing to the dysfunction by not focusing on what is actually important. I know this will come off as like sort of like an attack, but it's not. It's like seriously attempting, my part is to pass something on that actually works. That's what I'm saying. When everything isn't working and when we keep exposing how things aren't working, that's not part of how things work. It's not enough. What has to happen is this serious investigation about ourselves. Now, and this is why I say I've always loved the idea of art, because it continuously reminded me what is me and what is not me. And we're influenced by everything and everyone. I mean, I come across anything like a perception. I open my eyes, I'm influenced every day. We're just inundated by influences. So what it is with in my own process of doing the work that I do, it verifies it. It allows me to make choices that are specifically related to me and create a conviction and a strength even, I would say, the value in an art process. It actually creates character on a very high level. It's not the only activity that creates character. If we choose a discipline, whatever discipline we choose, it actually it says a lot about our character, how we can see something through that is uh, a discipline that requires us to make personal choices and not what everybody else is doing, but what we do. So if we hold up a camera that takes a photograph of a selfie or someone else, this has nothing to do with a personal choice anymore, especially when it becomes so ubiquitous that everybody is doing it. And I have to remind people, not everybody is an artist the way it's perceived. I just went to an exhibit in a local school called Beale, an art-centered, fabulous school. Beale in London, Ontario, has a student show. And anybody that is in London that is listening, I highly recommend you go to see the show. And specifically, my response was, I never criticize young souls making their work. And what I noticed, the only disturbing part of this is that a lot of the work is very dark. What I call the romance with the Grim Reaper. So the kids have been inculcated with this feeling, this darker feeling in their nature, and they're pursuing it with their expression. And that's perfectly all right, because you got to go through that. I went through that as well. So you see the goblins and the demons, and what impresses me as a darker feeling, a depressed feeling, an unhappy feeling. And I think this is part of the culture that we live in, because if you're happy in this culture, and truly happy, it's rare, or you're delusional. So the kids already have this perception of culture not functioning, and it's represented in the work. And but it's worthwhile having a look, because to see what this generation, and there's a lot of work, I think there were over 3,000 art objects, and all fairly small, right? It's like they have to show everybody, I guess. But everybody is not an artist. I would say I saw, I perceived maybe 3 or 4 people that stood out to me in this, and they actually had to do with a classically oriented expression. They had an impeccable eye-hand feeling in their work with real strength and power. And it was classically, it was like a life drawing thing. And I'm not a life drawing kind of artist. I'm more freewheeling, but I recognize strength of character already in some of the people that we're doing. Anyway, this is my thought on the transitioning part of it, how I understand this to be working in my commentary. When I do this, I recognize the value and importance of people exposing the bastards out there. But more important, if in this time frame that we have from zero to whatever, it's the most important activity that I have realized is practicing, I bring it up again, practicing putting into action this mysterious part in me that I recognize. I think everyone can understand when I say the word conscience. This is something that has to be invoked at every moment of every act, that it comes through something within myself that is completely separate from anything out there. It's the one thing that is so unique and individual in each person. And it leads to, when functioning, it leads to a complete transition in personality, in character, that actually gives us a chance to overcome what it is that people of integrity and understanding have realized. Not spinning your wheels on the world out there, but have understood something much more profound and deeply within themselves that actually works. And this is, again, I'm pounding on this the same way. You can't blame me on doing this, The same way the people I say are pounding on analyzing the world out there because that's the only really important thing. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Before we pound the world out there, we got to do the world in there. And the way we do it is to, to actually choose something that is so totally personal to ourselves. It doesn't mean that others aren't choosing the same thing, but if it comes from that inner conviction, it is absolutely unique. It is elegant. It is beautiful. I keep wanting to do, what is beauty? What is beauty? This would lead, I should think about, this should lead perfectly into my thoughts on what it actually is that is beauty in art. It's connected to this anyway. My shout out to people like amazing Polly and Matt, who has succeeded in articulating sufficiently the nature of this reality, as you know, the way he sees it is you've done it. You've done it. Now you got to transition. I don't know what that means for this guy or the amazing, but I don't think they'll do it because they're pretty well in the headlights. But anyway, I'll keep making my comments and pushing toward this this sense of personal choices every day, and find a discipline in activity or in relationships to activate conscience and see it in front of you, see the results in front of you. It'll be very encouraging. It's like seeing a work when I make a painting and it truly, I'm connected and it feels right. It's a great feeling, and it leads me to the next, right? It's sort of like a continuation.